This is Reimagining Higher Education, your go-to podcast with remarkable education leaders sharing personal stories from their experience in and around the sector, including reflections and hope for progress in education. With your host, Professor Judyth Sachs, former PVC Learning and Teaching at the University of Sydney, Deputy Vice Chancellor and Provost at Macquarie University, Special Advisor in Higher Education at KPMG, and now Chief Academic Officer at Studiosity. Welcome.
It gives me great pleasure to introduce Dr. Courtney Hills McBeth from Western Governors University, where she's the Chief Academic Officer and Provost. Courtney, thank you for agreeing to talk to us today. You've had a remarkable career as both an educator, a builder, but also as a change agent in a number of institutions and contexts. So I ask everybody to bring some object that represents their journey as a learner and a leader. So Courtney, what's yours?
My object is an American soccer ball. And this is actually signed by Mia Hamm, who in my mind is the greatest women's soccer player in history. And I grew up as a young girl being inspired by Mia Hamm and the US national team. And that's what inspired me to play soccer, which was my ticket to college. And so I have this Mia Hamm ball sitting in my office to remind me that everyone has their own journey to try to become the best.
So what was your position on the field?
So I was a goalkeeper.
Oh, right.
Which is different from Mia Hamm, who was a forward and scoring. But I chose to be a goalkeeper in about seventh grade. And I think I did that because I felt like it was the hard position, and maybe because I wasn't as fast as the girls on the field. But it's very much, I would say, shaped who I am and how I view the world, because I'm always wanting to look at the full landscape of things and think about all the different scenarios and try to think 2, 3, 4 steps ahead of how to prepare a defensive line and where to position myself in the goal and or an institution, in this case of WGU. It's taken until the last few years of leadership that I've realized that my journey as a captain on the University of Utah soccer team and All-American, that has very much driven how I am a leader and how I approach leadership. And sports is just an amazing thing to help shape an individual. And I feel so lucky that soccer and a scholarship, that was my pathway to get a college education.
And had you not had that sort of natural ability as a sports person, would you have still gone to college?
Definitely. I grew up with my grandmother, Fern, and she had an 8th grade education. And growing up, I also worked for my dad, and we would clean up construction sites as a kid. So we'd be picking up lumber and copper and pipes. And so I grew up in this environment where it was usually only me with a bunch of men on a construction site and doing hard labor work, thinking, I'm going to listen to my grandma Fern and get as much education as possible. And so the combination of this just drilling into my mind from Grandma Fern that education is the pathway to opportunity, and then the combination of knowing that I didn't want to do hard labor the rest of my life, shaped who I am today.
So you mentioned when we were chatting at the beginning that sport actually provides a really good analogy for leadership and really managing the complexities of daily life in higher education. Can you just elaborate that?
Sure. I might talk about my academic leadership team, for example. On my academic leadership team, I have executive deans who are overseeing schools that have 50,000 plus enrollment. Then I have a centralized curriculum and development team. I have a technology team, a student experience team, a team of faculty. And each one of my leaders comes with different strengths and capabilities. And some of them are more like a forward on a soccer field, that they're running fast and scoring goals, and others are more like a midfielder where they might see the field and they know where to pass. Or some might be more defensive players that know how to do defensive positioning and stop goals. And the only way to have an effective team, especially at high levels of leadership like we have in academia, is to really harness each leader's talent and be able to put those together in a very intentional and crafted way, so that you have a really high achieving team. And so that's the way that we work together at WGU with our academic leadership team.
But you as an individual sports person have to demonstrate discipline, match fitness, strategy, and then collegiality.
That's right. So teamwork, I think, is really critical. On a sports team, each individual has to be high achieving, waking up early, exercising early. I get up and exercise before I come to work, and showing up and being disciplined and delivering results, but also doing that in a way where collaboration is key. So collaborating with the president at WGU, CFO, etc. It really is a good recipe for a successful career. And I often like the data and the research that show that women who have competed at high levels, collegiate or professional, often are the ones who end up in C-suite positions because they know how to handle the pressure, they know how to collaborate and harness a team to be able to work together and collaborate and achieve key results.
When we started our conversation, you talked about student success,
Mhm.
and your university is actually about student success. Before you talk to me about student success, but could you just tell me a little bit about Western Governors University in Utah?
Sure. So Western Governors University was started in 1997 by two governors of Western states, the governor of Utah, Governor Levitt, and governor of Colorado, Romer. And they both saw the internet coming about and they said, you know, it's going to be tough for the established brick and mortar to fully innovate around the internet. So they got the 19 governors of Western states in the United States to come together and establish a nonprofit university. And so we've been around just under 30 years. We have 4 different schools of business, health, technology, and education. And I'm going to point to a visual here in my office. This here is a counter, which counts the number of degrees that we've awarded. It updates every morning. And so this morning it updated to 499,084 degrees. So we're shortly going to come up on this milestone of awarding 500,000 degrees. But as we operate at scale, it's not about the number, but it's about that individual student. So every decision we make is about the individual student and how we can serve them the most personalized way as possible, but to be able to do that hundreds of thousands of times each year. So I can share more about some of the metrics that we closely track and some of our key initiatives that we have to better that our key initiatives that we have going to and make sure every student improves because we have a more and more diversifying student body that's coming to WGU each year.
So it's an online university or an on-campus university or both?
Yes, so WGU is all online and we are a competency-based education model. So like the other 4,000 or so universities in the US, we are the largest nonprofit university in the US, competency-based. We are all asynchronous learning. However, we're adding on more synchronous learning opportunities and more cohorting opportunities as we get diversifying learners. So as WG was started, we were created for the working age adult, those learners in the US that had some college but no degree. And we've served those students very well for almost 30 years. And since the pandemic, we now have about 40% of our students who are coming with very little college experience or career experience. So we are going through what we call a dual transformation right now to continue to serve working age adults well, and then also taking on this monumental task of helping young learners figure out who they are and what career they want to pursue, which is a dramatically different job to be done than we have for our working age adults that are often reskilling or upskilling to stay current in the workforce.
So you talked about student success then, and given the sort of diverse student body that you have, how do you support students to be successful when we also know that a sense of belonging is an important part of that student success?
Right. So first and foremost, we have a one-on-one relationship between a student and a faculty mentor. So maybe let me actually describe our faculty model
Hmm.
uh, as our lever of student success. So instead of having a faculty model that's all grouped together, we have a disaggregated faculty model where we have faculty mentors that meet with a student each week, and they're doing things like helping them with registration, course sequencing, life coaching, academic advising, that think about that holistic life and academic coaching. And so every student is assigned a mentor to which they meet most of the time once a week with this individual. Then we also have course instructors who are all have doctoral level credentials, deep domain expertise. In a lot of cases, they've also worked in industry. And a student can meet one-on-one with a course instructor for a one-on-one session, or they can attend a group session with a course instructor. And we have course instructors who've worked for a lot of other universities that come to WGU. And then we also have our evaluators, those who are grading the assessments that students take and providing that hyper-personalized feedback. And then we also have a faculty role, which is in our curriculum development, that are our instructional designers and learning science folks. And so at any given time, the student has a mentor that they can meet with, an instructor. They can also go to our math and writing center, et cetera. So many of our students are autodidacts and they're, self-directed learning, and our model works great for them. And we're starting to build new course designs and new approaches with sense of belonging, community, building in cohorts. So starting this September will be the first time students that are in these younger, less prepared demographics come in, and they're automatically assigned to a cohort of students where they will meet in live sessions with instruction, with mentoring, to build more of that sense of belonging. So it's been really fascinating, Judyth, to dig into the data on this. Most of the research that's been done in sense of belonging is primarily on campus. There's, emerging research around sense of belonging in online spaces, and some of this new support that we're doing is some groundbreaking research, which is to really test that question of how to most effectively use cohorting models and community to build that sense of belonging, to create more stickiness and persistence and completion. And so we'll have a lot more to share there. Our early pilots with students show that those who attend live instructional sessions and or that have been part of these peer cohorts, they actually do persist more. We've done that in small pilots now. We're scaling out to thousands of students in this next year. So much more to come on that. And we're learning from some of the global research out there on online learning and sense of belonging. But I think it is a quintessential societal question of how to build belonging and to increase student learning and persistence. And uh, we're no longer in the state that we were 10 years ago of like, does online learning really work? And why do people go there? It's like students are voting with their feet in the US, that they're choosing these large online universities like WGU. So we're choosing to learn how to better serve them. And it is a frontier for higher education writ large of how to do this most effectively.
So, competency-based learning, can you just tell us a bit about that? Because it seems as though it's students come into the university and the university knows this is what you know because you've been able to demonstrate it.
Right. So within our model, we assess students to see where they're at, and then they are served up learning experiences to meet them where they're at. And then there's typically a final assessment in a course. Now, some students are able to quickly go through the content and take the assessment. Let's say perhaps they've been working in a community bank and they want to finally do a finance or accounting degree. Well, they know a lot of this knowledge from working in place. They know the nomenclature, the language, and And so those learners are able to come through very quickly and be able to pass a rigorous assessment and be able to move on to the next course. Now, a student who maybe has no working experience or contextual knowledge approaches the course very differently, where they have to really consume, and we scaffold the content for them to be able to build their knowledge and skills. But with every course, there's a culminating assessment, which is either an objective assessment, which is multiple choice, et cetera, or a performance assessment, which is a writing assignment. And we're actually building new types of assessment models in the age of AI to make sure that students actually can demonstrate what they're learning, even with the use of AI, so that the use of AI doesn't completely replace their thinking, et cetera. So I think that's one of the really interesting areas for any institution, which is how do we fully assess a student's learning in the age of AI? And we're doing some exciting things there, which I think we've got to lean into students using AI as opposed to just viewing it as a cheating tool. Otherwise, we won't be serving our students well, so they'll be prepared in the workforce.
So, what sort of students are you trying to prepare for the future that's ambiguous, uncertain, and challenging?
Well, it's a real thing for me as well. I'm a mother of three boys who are all teenagers, and so living this day to day is helpful as a leader. I think we have, I'll maybe frame it really simply as we have those adults who are in the workforce that are rapidly needing to and upskill in this area, and or they need to be hiring folks that have these AI skills, and they then become the expert strategy person to then be the human check on these types of models. And so we view those individuals as advancing learners or pro and upskillers. And so some of those learners need more like a master's degree to help them get deeper in AI and or industry certifications. And so that's, I think, more akin to lifelong learning and how to really instill the confidence in individuals to jump in and practice and use AI to become more proficient in their area, and to have the judgment and the sound reasoning of how to be the human in the loop and manage the agents and or teams. And then we have our younger students who are coming out of high school and are in their 20s who are trying to get their first job. So we're in an industry, whether it's in the US or around the world, where we've been preparing students, traditional aged 18 to 24-year-olds, for their first job. Well, we're in the world now that the first jobs don't exist, and or they actually are more like mid-career jobs.
Mm-hmm.
And so our view is our curriculum is highly workforce aligned, but we are rapidly building in experiential learning and students having to do simulations, project-based learning, where they are using AI in their learning to produce materials, to produce portfolios of how they used AI. And so we're completely redesigning our general education classes right now, where students are encouraged to learn the content, demonstrate the content. But an assessment in the future might be, we ask you to create this seminal work project using, we'll just say, Claude. And the student, with the use of AI, is demonstrating their knowledge of a subject area, their knowledge of how to use AI to produce, we'll just say, a working presentation deck. Well, then the assessment would be they have to present the deck to one of our faculty and actually demonstrate their thinking about how they use the model, what didn't go well, what did they need to adapt, what did they need to change. And so more of this presentation defense of their knowledge and their work. And so it's kind of an exciting time. I think it's a really scary time, but we're leaning into this area both to help those who are already in the workforce get skilled up quickly and or make career pivots, and with new learners to teach them how to use the tools so that when they're applying for jobs, they've got a portfolio of projects that they've already done. They've got demonstrated micro internships or simulations that they've done. And I think that's what we have to lean towards to make sure that our students can get jobs, as we're all, I think, watching the job market right now to understand where students are landing or are underemployed.
What I'm also hearing you say is that there's a socialization project also having to happen. You're having to socialize students, particularly mature age students, how to use this brave new world, this new technology, with a different focus on learning and understanding rather than just, rote learning or something like that, but not necessarily understanding. But at the same time, you've got to re-socialize the academics in using this tool to change how they teach, and what they assess. What sort of challenges are you facing in that sort of re-socialization moment?
Sure. I think a lot of universities are experiencing this, which faculty embrace the tools or not. Um, I think there's probably other examples of this in history of academics where you either have the students pushing the faculty and or younger faculty just coming from the field. In the WGU context, where we don't have the tenure system, a lot of our faculty are either master or doctoral level educated, and they've also been in industry. And so I think the context at WGU is a little bit different, where we're actually holding AI hackathons with our teams to actually just put them in spaces that are safe for them to start learning how to use it in their everyday. And as an institution, we're really incentivizing this, and we're holding up good examples of where employees have done this. A great example is we had a whole team that basically took all the skills data and helped translate that into building our curriculum. And a lot of that can actually be done much more efficiently and effectively with AI models. And so that whole team is actually building the AI enabled way that we scrape lots of data, workforce, economic data, that informs our skills-based structure of our curriculum. So we package our curriculum, it's skills-based, and we wrap skills into competencies and competencies into courses, which then there's program level outcomes is the combination of those. And so we've just leaned in, and folks who are reticent, I think they either come along or they might choose to work at a more traditional campus, and that's okay too.
So, getting back to the students, how do they describe their experience at Western Governors? And what are some of the highlights? You would talk to students, particularly at graduations, and you would have some wonderful stories. So,
Right.
what are some of the stories that you've kept and you've cherished about the experience of students?
Sure. Well, I'll share a recent one, and I'll just share that one of the commitments that I made to myself in whatever position I was in was to stay closely tied to students. So I meet with students every week at WGU, whether it's a one-on-one call or at a graduation. I think it's really important as leaders that we don't get, sectioned off in a white ivory tower and not understand our students. So being student obsessed for me means actually really knowing and understanding our students. I'll share the the story of our recent commencement speaker. His name is Divine. And as he would describe his journey, he landed in the US as an immigrant from Nigeria, having just tried to make his way in the crabbing industry in Nigeria. And he landed in the US with $18. And within a half hour of being in the US, someone had already scammed him out of $15 he charged, this guy lent him his cell phone and said, oh, it'll cost you $10 to make the call and then another $5 to take the call from your family. So Divine described landing in the US, learning some really hard things and having to work through his journey. He just graduated with a master's of information technology at WGU. And he's speaking at a conference here that we're having this week. And when I asked him, I said, what was the WGU experience to you, Divine? And he said, it wasn't about seat time. It was about proving to myself that I had the competency and the mastery of technology. And that's what the WGU model did for him, because he had to pass those rigorous assessments. And that gave him confidence as an individual and as an employee in the workforce. So I love that. I actually have a student quote here that I keep on my desk. This is just one of many, but when I meet with students, 20 out of 20, when I ask them about their experience, they will talk about their mentor. So this is a student, Bethany Joyce. She said, and I quote, "My mentor kept me up to date on graduation requirements, testing requirements, and timelines to complete my degree. She also helped me connect with other students, gave me tips for finding research articles, and answered all of my questions, no matter how silly or complicated. My mentor was a lot like my personal cheerleader. She encouraged me when I was feeling low or overwhelmed and celebrated my success." So from Bethany, a student, that's what students talk about the WGU model being, is the mentor's my cheerleader. And there's this journey of overcoming self-doubt and becoming more confident in their self. So I mean, that's what gets me up every day and excited to come to work.
That's a remarkable quote. And I can absolutely understand why it gets you up every day. So if you and I were going to have this conversation in 3 years' time, what sort of things do you think we'd be talking about in terms of technology, student experience, but also expectations of students of higher education?
I think the next 3 years are pivotal, particularly in the US, and I don't know how much this translates for other countries, whether Europe or Australia, but there is a reckoning of questioning the value of higher education in the US with the polarization that we have going on here. So I'll speak maybe from the US context that in 3 years, my vision is that higher education, and particularly WGU, is preparing every student, no matter their starting point, for economic mobility. And what that looks like is delivering a deeply personalized experience where students feel human connection through peers and connecting to our WGU network of now more than 500,000 students, so that it's the personalization, it's the human connection with their peers, with our alumni, with our faculty, and that they can get a job. So, I mean, it sounds really practical, but WGU is designed for economic mobility, and that means that students have to have the confidence to finish their credential and to be able to provide for their family, and that's what the future is. The future in terms of jobs is a bit uncertain. What will jobs look like? Who's employed in what types of jobs? What skills are needed? And those human enduring skills are going to be needed. So that's where this human connection, the professionalism to show up on time, to work hard, teamwork, collaboration. It really is that combination of human and durable skills, professional skills with the technical skills. And I would just say, lastly, our gen ed is being completely reoriented towards professionalism and leadership. This notion of everyone's a leader in their community, in their family, in their church, etc. So this notion of leadership and AI tech literacy and the ethics to go with that. So that's the future and the elements that we need to deliver to ensure our students have success.
I've got 3 more questions.
Okay.
First one, what advice would you give to the younger Courtney?
Wow. Maybe to enjoy the moment.
Can you elaborate on that?
we're working towards big goals, and sometimes we need to stop and enjoy the moment and enjoy the journey.
And you've been to many graduations and listened to many commencement speeches by remarkable young people. What advice do you give them?
You know what's interesting is so much of what they tell me is this journey of becoming the best version of themselves. So the advice I give them is pass this along. Be the change in someone else of the change that you experienced here. And so we celebrate the graduates, and towards the end it's all oriented towards, okay, you went on this journey, now be the change for someone else, help them be on their path to education as that pathway to opportunity.
So that speaks of both a moral purpose, but it also speaks of a strong community connection. Is that underlying what you're trying to do at Western Governors?
It very much is. I really believe that talent is universal, but opportunity is not. So if an individual is born in certain zip codes in the US, they have much less access to resources. And that's the reality. And I believe every individual has the ability to learn. And it's our job to craft the experience and the system and the supports to help them be successful. And so, what that means is personalizing that experience, but also connecting our students to networks, to community, to help build that social capital and that network to be successful. And then I would just say, lastly, I really believe every individual is a leader. And the more we can help an individual believe they're a leader of their, whether it's their family or their church community or of their neighborhood, it's an elevated way, I think, of civic engagement and purpose, which is if you believe you're a leader and you are driven to make your whatever that community is to you better, if we can do that millions of times over, we're going to have a much better world to live in.
Now, I'm going to finish on a quirky question.
Okay.
What are you reading at the moment?
Okay, well, can I give two answers here?
Of course.
Okay. One would be there's a really great online newsletter called On Ed Tech, and it's written by Phil Hill and Glenda Morgan. And so for any higher ed people, especially those working in higher ed and technology, that is an amazing online newsletter. And then the second thing that I'm reading at the moment is a book called Measure What Matters. And this is a book that basically does case studies on different successful organizations like Google and Intel, et cetera. But that book I'm reading right now because it's our annual planning. It's about basically focusing on what are your key objectives and what are the key results that you're driving towards, and very succinctly and elegantly driving an organization towards top priorities and measuring progress towards that. So at WGU, because we have these different segments of students, we now know what is their student success and what are our stretch goals that we're working towards. So that Measure What Matters is a great book for those that are really focused on what are their current student success metrics and what is an institution trying to drive towards in terms of completion.
And are there any books that you're reading for pleasure?
Not at the moment, I have to admit. I'm trying to think what might be the last one that I read for pleasure. Nightingale. I have just started that book, Nightingale. So,
well, you must be also about to end the academic year in the next six or so weeks. So perhaps during that break, you can have some opportunity to read some trash.
Well, that's a great suggestion. But Judyth, we have students that start on the 1st of every month. So we're on a continual academic calendar.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's also, well, look, just let me you were started to as an institution to be different. You are continuing to be different. Are people following your line in that sense of difference?
I believe so. We have a lot of institutions that come to us to learn about assessment and how to do more competency-based education. Institutions have certainly followed us when it comes to our marketing and our approach to attracting learners, and as well as personalization can mean a lot of things, but letting a student be able to start and enroll once a month is really groundbreaking instead of having to wait a whole academic year or 3 to 5 months. And we also have the ability, students can take courses and start daily. They could start taking courses before they start a full academic term. So there's some of these design elements that other institutions have picked up. Yeah.
Well, your university is certainly a groundbreaker. It's certainly a beacon on the hill for both students, but also the sector. So, Courtney, thank you very much for giving me 40 minutes of your time at the end of your day. And I've absolutely had a great time listening to you, prodding you, and I look forward to hearing of your further success. But if I may finish, Sam Kerr is also a pretty good soccer player.
That is right. That is right. And I'm looking forward also to the next season of Ted Lasso. For all the Ted Lasso fans out there, we have season 4 coming up, and World Cup is coming up. So lots to have fun and watch this summer.
Well, once again, thank you, and enjoy your evening.
Thank you, Judyth. Appreciate it.
You have been listening to Studiosity's podcast, Reimagining Higher Education, candid conversations within higher education, sharing stories of leadership, change, and best practices in teaching and learning. Visit studiosity.com.